Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor
and his cousin
gives you sports betting tips. I am your host, Professor Sides. For the latest updates, information, and picks, you can follow me on Twitter at Professor Sides. You can follow my cousin Jared on Twitter at Cousin Jared. This college football episode covers select games from Week 7 of the 2022 season. In case you're new here, check out the webpage on the banner. I made a little primer for you there. It's kind of over there. www.pickswiththeprofessor.com/new. Just typed out half of what I normally say and things that I've kind of mentioned before. Just put it all in one place. So you can pause this, you can go read it, you can come back. It's kind of long. But if you have not seen an episode, just check that out. It just kind of frames everything for you. Otherwise, the goals in this episode are to share key information about this week's games, give you a few things to think on, and explain why certain plays are being made. We never recommend blindly tailing or fading any pick, rather to hear the justifications and thought processes to make sure you're fully on board with us or against us before investing your hard-earned money. I'll make a pick on every game, but you should take what you like and leave the rest. Remember that there are no locks and gambling, so what I provide are loves, likes, and leans. That is A, B, and C grade picks to indicate my confidence level with respect to scaling wagers. Cousin Jared will also indicate his favorite plays by placing a second unit on them this season. However, please understand that good and bad variance will occur, so as much as we'd like to see will be profitable each and every week, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Cousin Jared, so... full disclosure, I believe in transparency. You know, I'm a professor. I love learning. I love teaching people, and I love learning both. So I'm never afraid to say I want to learn more. I always want to get better. I always want to improve, right? Mm-hmm. If you or if someone out there can explain what's going on this season, I would love to hear, because I feel like we keep talking about the kind of good and bad luck situation. And I tracked them out on Discord, and I think I got pretty close. I might have missed one or two, but I think I tracked out 2 wins this week that were probably should not have had those. Very lucky, last minute, weird backdoor nonsense, and 9 losses. And I haven't tracked it before, but I feel like that's kind of been every week now. I feel like I nailed this last week, and I literally was up rounding error on the week. And I'm it felt like I think I completely swung and missed in 3 games. But I mean, we're talking about literally every game. It's 50 games. It's going to happen, right? And somehow basically broke even. And I don't know. It feels, I keep saying it feels like it's going to turn and we're going to get those lucky wins. It just, why can't we get them? I have no idea what's going on. Maybe you have some answer for me.
Nope. I have no answer for you. I feel like there has been more strange things, missed extra points, blocked extra points, games going 20 minutes without any score at all. I just feel like there's been more strange things this year than you could possibly count. And one thing I've noticed, I noticed a lot of things this past weekend, but onside kicks, I feel like everybody has gotten so concerned about getting blown up on the onside kicks that they're not actually watching the ball anymore. They're just waiting to get blown up, which, I mean, rightfully so. I would be doing the same thing. And I feel like we're getting more onside kicks recovered and whatnot as well. So I feel like it's just this combination of all sorts of crazy things. People going for 4th down more often than people going for 2 earlier in the game. I just feel like there's all sorts of weird things that have just contributed to kind of these weird scores and kind of weird outcomes relative to the spread.
Yeah, and BYU missed that extra point. I was like, oh gosh, here we go again. Something weird's going to happen. And of course, it didn't affect the game at all, thankfully. But yeah, when that would happen, I was like, oh, here we go again, right? Talking about onside kicks, the Oklahoma State thing was fascinating. Calling a fair catch on the onside kick, and it's like, wow, I'm driving right through that loophole. Apparently that exists in the rules. At some point, you have to assume that they're going to change that, because that seems now like we've solved onside kicks. Just always call fair catch.
Exactly.
And that's going to then it's not solve them. It's just going to force kickers to do that thing where they basically just put the ball sideways and just kick it and hope it does a weird sideways, like a boomerang kind of kicking around funny. I guess is the only way to get around that. But that was fascinating too. Just talking about onside kicks. But I talked about this on the Discord chat. I think hopefully you listener did well. I feel like you probably did, because I think we, for the most part, gave out a lot of good information. And so I broke even last week picking every game, but there were so many great plays out there. I'm hoping that you got some of them, or maybe you just didn't take Memphis and watch us struggle with that, whatever the heck happened in that one, or Kansas State, hopefully get that later in the week and laid one, or when it was down to one, maybe just took the money. That was one of the plays of the day.
Or took the money line, which I literally said first thing out of my mouth when you mentioned it, and then talked myself into laying the 2 points. So just, listen to the good things that we say and not the dumb things that we say after that.
To be fair, the problem wasn't the money line or the spread. The problem was the Kansas State guy running into the end zone, and it was a great play by Iowa State. I won't say anything. Fantastic play, and I think Baylor actually did that to Iowa State a few weeks before. So Iowa State's been involved in a bunch of these, but fantastic play, knocking the ball out 1 yard away from there, and then Kansas State, wins by a full touchdown. It doesn't matter, but 10-9. What a weird football game. Plays of the time slot with 4-1 on Saturday. So again, there were a lot of good things out there. Hopefully, you had a profitable week, and hopefully we can do the same thing. I kind of feel like the same thing this week. Early indications are there's a lot of good things that we like that we'll cover here in this episode. But before we get to that, some reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free. And if you turn on notifications, you won't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. Reminder, we've started up a Patreon page. If you're looking to support the show and get some extra benefits, membership starts at just $3 per month, which gets you the play of the day or plays of the day. And for $15 a month, you get early access to the projected spreads. We've already seen two numbers that I noticed that I like, maybe because Jeremy B have different ones that we liked from the early spreads that are already gone. One of them, Thursday, Baylor -3 is now up to 3.5. You could have got that 3 locked in. The benefit from 3 to 3.5 is huge. There's tons of these things like every week. So it's a little investment there, and getting those numbers earlier on Sunday afternoon can really help. There's a lot of line movement Sunday throughout the day, Sunday night into Monday. So it's a benefit you can get if you're interested. On the crawler there is the link for that Patreon sign up. Otherwise, let's get to the games. All lines courtesy of Bet Online. Sign up link in the show description. And current as the time of this recording on Sunday night, every game today we're going to talk about is a Saturday game. We'll get going at noon Eastern with Penn State and Michigan. Michigan's a 7-point favorite here, total of 51. I'm laying the 7 with an A-grade play here. I've got Michigan ranked 4th. Penn State ranked 16th, so I think Penn State's a solid team. But the last time we saw Penn State, they struggled against Northwestern. And part of that was the elements of that game, but part of that was almost like, Northwestern's so bad, I don't really care what you're playing, and you ought to be able to do better than that.
Right.
I kind of think those elements that helped Northwestern are almost the same elements that Michigan just does to you, which is, that pounded on the ground, can get tons of yards, explosive plays like that, smothering defense, which the rain can make any defense feel a lot smothering, right? It's the same sort of thing. Like, I think Michigan just kind of does that to you in general. I'm going to lay the 7 at home with Michigan. Last week with Michigan, they missed the cover, but they were only off on the sideline projection by about 4 or 5 points. And that was considering that they got off to a really slow start. It was a look-ahead spot, and the running back coach having a seizure in the middle of the game, clearly affecting the players for a long stretch. And they still basically got pretty close to what the projection was. Sideline projects this to be Michigan minus 11.3. I think this is a double-digit victory for Michigan. I think this is kind of them here establishing themselves on national television as we should be in the top 4. It's us and Ohio State, and now who knows if both of them can make the playoff, but I think establishing themselves as we are one of the 4 best teams. They need a big victory here because the loser of that game, if it's Ohio State, has gotten enough respect at this point, probably makes the playoff. But I feel like Michigan needs a big enough win here to impress people, to remind them, to give them a shot at the playoff if they were to lose that game to Ohio State, which looks like the best team in the country at this point. So I'm going to take Michigan. I think they make a statement here in this one, starting us off at noon Eastern. It's an early start, but I think the crowd's going to be ready. I've been to a game at Michigan that was in the afternoon, and let me tell you, that crowd was pretty raucous and mostly drunk already as well. So I don't see why a noon start or a 2:30 start or whatever changes anything. I think the crowd's going to be fired up for this one. This is a big home game for them. Cousin Jared, I've got an A-grade play on Michigan minus 7. What are your thoughts for this game?
I am also officially laying the 7 points with Michigan for a lot of the reasons that you just said. I felt like I was slow to get on the Michigan train last year just because they're not flashy. They're just so good at what they do. And I think that just makes it difficult for somebody who's, not looking at inside under the hood, kind of like what you are on these numbers here, just using my eyes. They're not visually appealing. But obviously, I feel like we have a long enough track record now to just say they are so good at what they do. And when you make a mistake, they will capitalize on that mistake. And it seems like they usually don't make those same mistakes. So, them being at home, the way that they play, I have no problem laying the 7 points here. If Penn State gets down early, I just don't see how they're going to claw their way back in the game with this Michigan defense in the Michigan run game. So I'm going to lay the 7 points as well. If I had to look at the total here, I would definitely say under 51 seems like a pretty good play to me. This feels similar to, or could end up being similar to, the Michigan-Iowa game. Obviously, Penn State's defense a lot better than Iowa's. Penn State's offense a lot better than Iowa's offense. But I could still see like a 31-14 type game or something like that, 28-14. So I would definitely be eyeing the under in this situation as well. But I just feel really confident laying the touchdown with Michigan.
I'm looking at this under as well. 51 doesn't quite do it for me. I'm kind of thinking 52, 52 and a half. Is that kind of, are you thinking the same thing? Is that's kind of a buy point for an under, really?
Yeah. I obviously would love 52 or 52 and a half a lot more than 51.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of where I was like, I kind of think under, but I want a little bit more cushion there than 51 affords us. But I'm with you. I'd rather play under than over. Also at noon Eastern, Miami, Ohio at Bowling Green. Miami of Ohio, a little redemption here for us this last week with an A-grade play after disappointing week the week before that. I'm going to lay the 6.5 with them here, and I want to get this play in early. I like that it's under 7. I don't know where this number is going to go, but I just think it's more likely to go to 7 than 6. Sideline says 7.5, and I always say 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4 times, whatever the number goes, where my model goes. And so if it goes to 7, I'd rather be on this side of 7 than at 7, or it's definitely 7.5. So it's a B grade pick, specifically because apparently we need to get Jake on here, who's the Mac whisperer, giving us these insights. But I mean, I really don't trust either one of these teams. Neither one of these teams is good, and going on the road and winning by a touchdown is not easy in the MAC, unless you're, Toledo really at this point. So it's only a B grade pick. It's not my most confident one, but I do think it's worth an investment here on this side of 7. I think 7's most likely outcome for this. Again, highlights at 7.5. So B grade pick for me, laying the 6.5 with the Red Hawks. Sideline has them ranked 105th, Bowling Green 123rd. So really we're just talking about Bowling Green just being a pretty bad football team, which is why we can lay the 6.5 with a team on the road against them. B grade pick for me, total of 47.5. Cousin Jared, what do you have for us here?
How is it that I have spent so much time talking about Miami, Ohio on this show this season? This seems very strange. I talked about him from the beginning of the season. After that first game against Kentucky, I like what I saw. I was extremely impressed with what Miami of Ohio did to Kent State's offense in this last game, beating Kent State last week. They really held that offense in check, almost better than Georgia did. So, is that completely, something that could be? I
think you heard it here first. They're better than Georgia.
I guess I may be breaking news there. Anyway, I'm looking at the total here. This is a low number, but you know what? I don't care. I'm going under 47.5. I don't think that Bowling Green's going to be able to get anything going at all on offense. They had one game this season where they put up 34 points against Marshall. That was in overtime. They got 3 turnovers. They still only had 350 yards of offense, rushed for less than 100 yards in that game. So their highest scoring game of the season, it was just kind of some turnover luck and everything there, which I don't think Miami of Ohio is going to do. So this is a fairly low total for me to play an under, but I just have a lot of faith in Miami of Ohio's defense that Bowling Green's not going to get me points on the board. So no idea what the final score was going to be. I'm maybe thinking something like, 24-14 or something like that. I think it's just not going to be very many points to be had in this game.
Of note, that was also Marshall's game the week after they beat Notre Dame. So that's just an extra element of weirdness in that game. I'm with you. I lean under as well. It's not an official recommendation for me yet. I'm hoping for 48, so I'm just going to hold off for now.
Yeah. So obviously, I agree with that. I went and looked. There's no 48s on the board at any shops right now. There's some 46s and 46 and a half. So I figured if anything, this might go back down. Just figured I want to grab it while I can. Only one unit, so not putting a ton on this or anything.
Okay, this is one we might look back to later in the week. If it goes,
Yeah.
if it hangs around there, really, I think the next key number down really is 45. So, like we kind of talk about, like 47 in a little bit, but really it's, 46 and a half, whatever. It's like 45 and a half, kind of whatever. So I'm kind of looking at the under as well. If it gets to 48, that's where I will pull the trigger. So I may look back to that one later in the week. Let's see where the number goes. But yeah, that Miami of Ohio defense, impressive for sure. Surprisingly impressive. Speaking of surprisingly impressive teams, noon Eastern, Kansas at Oklahoma. Kansas quarterback goes down, and then we get a backup with the fun name coming in that nobody saw that coming, and just continue to score points. And my goodness, that game just had fantastic catch after fantastic catch after fantastic catch. It was like watching a video game almost.
And kudos to you for calling it the Big 12. The old Big 12 is back, baby.
Yes, nailed it with that one in the Oklahoma State one. I mean, just the points was galore. Oklahoma. Whew, I had an A-grade pick on Texas. I said, hey, this Oklahoma team is in a bad way. It's a terrible matchup for them. But even I didn't see it going that bad for them. And we talked about, I said specifically, you go screen grab this. I was like, Texas is going to take out their frustrations here this week on Oklahoma. But my goodness, it's not impossible for Oklahoma to go winless in conference. I don't think that happens. But you look at the schedule, and it's not like the easier games, the easier teams, like West Virginia on the road. And so just a fascinating matchup. I cannot believe I'm so intrigued by Kansas, Oklahoma coming into the season. Last season, we would have said this is Oklahoma minus 35 and probably would have laid the 35. What a world we live in. I'm going to grab the 7 with Kansas. An A-grade play. I don't really care if Daniels is healthy, given what I saw from the backup. I am penalizing this 1 point. I think he's probably worth maybe 2. It's hard to say how much the quarterback's worth, but my official projection of this is Oklahoma minus 5. If Daniel plays or not, that kind of makes it more like 4 or 6 is kind of where I'm thinking this number should be. If he plays, I would make it OU minus 4. If he doesn't, OU minus 6. Backup clearly didn't really miss a beat in there. They've Kansas, a decent team or whatever. But at 7, I'm happy either way. I'm going to grab the 7 as an A-grade play with Kansas. I think they can hang in there in this game. It feels a lot like the last week's game against TCU. Hang in there, fun game. Who knows what's going to happen? And it's hard to win by more than 7. And there's a off chance that the train is about to come off the track in Norman. I don't know if it will, but I mean, it's on the table. So I'm back in Kansas here. I love getting 7 points. Total is 64.5. Cousin Jared, what is your take for us on this one?
I am taking the 7 points with Kansas as well. I've mentioned a couple of weeks now that I felt like my plays on Kansas have been more about my heart than my head. Well, this one is with my head. My head is with my heart on this one. After what I saw last week, number 1 from Kansas, like you said, with the backup coming in, the offense kind of staying on track, I just feel really confident about what I'm getting from them at this point. Oklahoma's defense, on the other hand, I also feel very confident with what I'm getting from them at this point, and it is not much at all. I'm obviously a key number like 7. You're not going to pass that up, but if you want to sprinkle a little bit on the money line,
I was going to say, I was like, I 100% recommend a half unit of whatever, something on the money line here, just in case Kansas pulls it off. I think it's going to be a nice little payday for you.
Yeah, and I think College Game Day did a pretty good job, kind of outlining some of the unique things that the Kansas offense does, but you just look at all of the busted coverages and all of the bad defense Oklahoma's been playing the past few weeks. And I'm telling you, this Kansas offense, there are going to be at least 3 or 4 just terribly busted. Again, based on what we've seen the past few weeks, there are going to be some terribly busted plays.
50 yard plays.
Yes.
Easily.
There's going to be nobody within 10 yards of the Kansas player. I can promise you. Just what they do on offense is so unique and very intriguing, in my opinion. And again, Oklahoma just can't seem to keep track of where the people are at on the field at times. So I'm taking all 7 points here. Again, I would recommend maybe a little something on the money line as well. This is just one of those things. The Oklahoma defense has been so bad. I don't know how you can't pass up taking the touchdown.
Yeah, and we talk about Oklahoma, and it's a little bit Dylan Gabriel. Absolutely, I am penalizing Oklahoma a little bit because of that as well. I think he's obviously worth a lot to that offense, but you saw what happened with them against Kansas State for the full game, and you saw what happened with them against TCU before the injury. And TCU was just running up and down the field on them.
Yeah.
And Oklahoma's offense was just kind of piddling around. So I don't know if it matters if he plays or not. It's
right.
It obviously does, but it's just one of those things where it's like he's not going to help them stop Kansas, obviously. And even when he was in there, the offense hadn't really looked like what we thought it would do, given a guy of his talent coming in. Oklahoma just obviously a disappointing season and just falling off a mountain here. Total 64.5. I have no idea what to make of this total because I'm like you. I think Kansas is going to score just about every time they want to, but I don't know how much Oklahoma can score. Kansas defense, held Iowa State down, but that was Iowa State. They gave up a lot of points to TCU. That was TCU. I think Oklahoma's offense is somewhere in between there. So it's really a question as to how much Oklahoma scores, but I think maybe a Kansas team total over would also be another thing to look at because I'm like, I think they're going to score a ton of points, and the implied team total here would be probably too low in my opinion. I don't know what else to say about this other than just what a world we live in that we're thinking about we're recommending a small play on the Kansas money line Oklahoma, and it's not a joke play. It's an actual like we think they might actually win the ball game. Yeah. Also at noon Eastern, Central Michigan at Akron. Another situation here where I want to get the number now before it goes anywhere else. Central Michigan's a 13.5 point favorite. It's a B grade pick for me on them. 13 kind of key, but not nearly as key as 14 is. I want to be on the right side of that. Akron is terrible. Sideline has them ranked 127th. Central Michigan's right around 100. This is two 1-5 teams, but these are not the same caliber of 1-5 teams. Akron gave up like 60 points, I think, to Ohio last week.
55,
55. I mean, Ohio's not that good either.
No, they're not.
So, you never know exactly how a game is going to play out, and you can't just take 1 week and translate that forward. But I mean, the bottom line is this Akron team is terrible. There's a reason that sideline says this should be Central Michigan minus 14.7. So I think the number should be 14.5 or 15. I just want to be on the right side of this just in case it does get to 14 or 14.5. I've got a B grade pick there on Central Michigan, locking into 13.5 early in the week. Total of 59. Cousin Jared, if Akron gives up that many points, we have to take over, right?
Okay, so first of all, this game's gross. I would also say Akron's offense started off very, very poorly. Didn't score at all against Michigan State. Only scored 6 at Tennessee. Only scored 12 at Liberty. They started MAC play, and talking about the offense specifically here because Joe Moorhead's the head coach there at Akron. So once they started conference play, 28 points against Bowling Green, 34 points against Ohio last week. So this is one thing I'm keeping an eye on is Akron their offense going to step up a little bit? And you mentioned how bad their defense was, giving up 55 to Ohio. So yes, I would definitely say this is potentially an over spot. I think Central Michigan could just run over, around, and through. Remember that Taysom Hill video that one year he scored like 15 touchdowns against Texas, and they had the over, around, and through? Yeah. Anyway, that's very niche. There's gonna be like 5 people who laugh really hard when they hear that. Anyway, that could be this game. I think there could be a bunch of points. So I don't have an official play on it, but Akron is a team I am watching where if their offense gets going, you might not be able to set their totals high enough.
I think they're going enough here. I'm making the official play for me over 59. I just think there's be a lot of points in this game. Yeah. I don't think Central Michigan gets 55 necessarily this game. That seems a little high, but I don't really think they're going to be under 40, and Akron's going to score a few points as well. I mean, this feels like a 45-21 type game, 45-28, whatever. I mean, one of those type games where there's just a lot of points in Central Michigan, pretty similar to the Ohio game, maybe just a little bit lower. So official recommendation over 59. It's a key number at 59, given that is a field goal plus the touchdowns to get you 256. So I like Central Michigan, and I'm going official play on the over 59 as well. 3:30 Eastern, kickoff Charlotte at UAB. UAB was good to us last week. I'm going to back them again here, minus 23.5. A B grade play, just something I want to get early in the week before it gets any higher. I think this might head towards 24. 24 is obviously a possible landing spot, so we're going to lock it in. Now, sideline says 28, but Charlotte's had issues with the quarterback, so their data is a little bit wonky with who's playing and whatnot. I still don't think Charlotte's that good. My bigger concern completely independent of that is UAB Western Kentucky next Friday. Should be a fantastic game. A little bit of a look ahead spot here. So I think UAB is good enough to just get out there and kick some tail and it not be a big deal. Similar to what happened with Ole Miss this weekend. And again, thank you, Lane Kiffin, for that. But it's same sort of thing where it's like you have a look ahead spot, but also you have a pretty good team against a pretty bad team. So I want to be on UAB here. I like this number less than 24. That's why it's a B grade pick. If they had a bye week next week, this is an A grade play for me. But with Western Kentucky next week, especially on a Friday, I don't see the starters playing the entirety of the fourth quarter, maybe not even the entirety of the third quarter. So only a B grade pick for me. I like it, don't love it. Total of 63. Another one where it feels like over might be the way to look. I'd rather probably have over 62 than over 63. But Charlotte's offense, when they can get going, we saw UAB had a ton of points last week. Charlotte's defense is truly terrible. The only question about the over is the same thing I already mentioned, the look ahead spot for UAB. So it kind of makes me a little bit leery of the total. Again, if UAB was off next week, though, and you can get to 62, I would definitely say over. But as it is, I have kind of mixed feelings on it. What are your thoughts on this one, Jared?
Man, I don't feel good about this game either way. And the reason I say that is because I think a good analog for this game is the game that happened last week, Middle Tennessee and UAB just absolutely blew their doors off. The problem is another good analog for this game, I think, would be UAB's game against Georgia Southern earlier this year, where UAB only won by 14. And so, I think you can make a case that Charlotte may be similar to both Georgia Southern and Middle Tennessee. So 2 data points there. It doesn't really give me anything conclusive. The 63, though, I think if anything, I would lean towards under, just because you look at those 2 other games. The UAB Middle Tennessee game was a total of 55. The Georgia Southern UAB game was a total of 56. And so I feel like this is one of those things. If UAB covers this game, it's because Charlotte hasn't scored very many points at all. And if this game is close, I think it's because, Charlotte's defense has somehow managed to not let UAB score a bazillion points. So I think I would actually lean towards the under here, just because, like I said, if UAB blows them out, Charlotte hasn't scored much. And so I just don't feel comfortable going over.
All right. Also at 3:30 Eastern, Oklahoma State at TCU. This one should be a doozy of a game here. I mean, you don't want to say potential preview of the Big 12 championship game, but I mean, maybe a potential preview of the Big 12 championship game here. TCU's a 3.5-point favorite. TCU is really good. I talked about this last week, and I've been very impressed with them. I don't know why we're getting the hook here. I'm going to take the field goal and the hook. I love this. This feels like a tight game. This feels like what was going to happen in Kansas TCU had Kansas scored late and tied it up, and they were right there with it, where it would have been a tie game late, and then it's like someone's going to drive late. Last time it was the ball kicks a field goal to win it. That's how I see this being, 35-35, 31-31. Last team with the ball kicks a field goal and wins it by 3. And I don't know who does it, but I'm going to take the 3.5 to Oklahoma State. I think money line on Oklahoma State a tiny bit makes a lot of sense too, just because the big plus odds of. I think they're the better team. The game's in Fort Worth, though. Sideline has Oklahoma State ranked 14th, TCU 17th. So a small gap in the rankings, but in the ratings, Oklahoma State is about 1.5 to 2 points clear of TCU. So Sideline says this should be basically a pick-em. TCU should be a slight, half-point favorite, which, of course, given that you can't tie in college football these days, doesn't mean anything, right? Basically should be a pickle, maybe TCU -1. I would probably make it TCU -2. I think we're just getting a lot of value here at 3.5. A grade play for me on the pokes here. Total of 67.5. Talk me out of this over, because I said it last week and you got 2 of the same teams I talked about. There's going to be points galore that play fast.
Yeah.
Why is this number not, 73? Because I think it should be 73. Can you talk me out of that?
Nope.
All right. All right. Then that's an official recommendation for me. Then over 67.5. I think this game is a lot of points. So I love the pokes and I love the over. Points, fun. You got to watch this game. It'll be good.
I can't refute that, because I feel like we saw 2 identical games involving these 2 teams last weekend. It was the exact same thing. So why would I say that?
Yeah. All right. So I got the pokes. I got the over. Jared, what do you have for us?
Official play for me. I'm also taking the 3.5. I don't know why we're getting 3.5 in this game. You said that you feel like maybe these teams are teams are equal, make this 2.5. I still would make this a pick 'em, even though it's being played in Fort Worth. I just have, maybe I just have more faith in Oklahoma State. Don't know why. Their defense hasn't been anything to write home about this year, but I still trust Oklahoma State's defense to get a big play when they need one, more so than I trust TCU's defense. Spencer Sanders, I can't believe I'm saying this. Seems like he's kind of cleaned up a lot of things this season. So
I talked about it a week ago. That's what I was saying. That like he's had that where he's been playing in the system long enough. He's old enough, mature enough.
Yeah,
still gonna have a couple bad moments, but for the most part, pretty good quarterback.
Yeah, so I'm taking the 3.5. Will the points matter either way in this one? Maybe not, but still, you got to feel real good about it. Again, I like what you said about the money line play as well. But yeah, just getting 3.5 points with this Oklahoma State team just seems like way too many.
Yeah, I think my recommendation for you viewers is kind of think about how you feel about this. If you think the points won't matter at all, I think that's because there should be so many touchdowns. I think that's a reasonable play. And I think just shift the money line. Like I said, my thought is I just can't get the TCU Kansas came out of my head where Kansas was driving there at the end. And I'm thinking they're going to tie this up. They would have made it 38-38. And then it would have been from there, just whoever gets the field goal wins it. And that's kind of how I feel about this one too. So I think the 3.5 points might matter because both these coaches are smart. At the end, if it is tied late, they're going to be trying to kill the clock. They're going to be going for 4-yard runs and long first down, running off the clock first downs, whatever, to kick that game-winning field goal and not give the other team a chance to score. Now, they may miss the field goal, and then it may go to overtime. And then if it goes to overtime again, the 3 might really matter as well. True, so true. I like the 3.5. But again, if you want to talk yourself into touchdowns are all that's going to be the thing here, take the money line or split your bet, go for a little bit of both. But Oklahoma State, I think it's a better of a team than TCU. As good as TCU is, I still think Oklahoma State probably the class of the Big 12 at this point. With asterisk Texas aside, is Texas back? I don't know. I feel like we do this 5 times a year. I don't know. We'll talk about Texas later in the week. I'll just say this as we're talking about Texas. I hold off on playing Texas until we talk about them later in the week. Terrible spot for them. Terrible spot this week. So we'll hold off on that analysis about playing or anything until we talk about that game. Yeah. 3:30 Eastern, Vanderbilt at Georgia. I've got an A pick on Georgia, -38. And you're like, whoa, an A play laying 38 points. Here's the thing. Georgia had no business covering last week against Auburn. A giant number. Covering, what do we get? 30. I got 30 points, I think, with Auburn. They had no business covering that, and they did. Auburn isn't great, but they're a heck of a lot better than Vanderbilt. Georgia has a bye week next week. This is the spot to play everybody the whole game, maybe not the last drive, literally. Georgia's got to figure out how to get better on offense. This is the game to try all the different things you want to try for the full game. And Vanderbilt is terrible. I love laying the 38. I want to get this number now before it gets bigger. This feels like one of those things where it's going to eke out and get to 40, 41, 42. That's probably where it should be because of how bad Vanderbilt is. Sideline says it should be Georgia -39, and it's not taking into account, like I said, the fact that Georgia has a bye week next week. So in reality, if I were just looking at what Sideline's recommendation for the spread is at 39, I would say probably make it more like 41, 42. I want to lay the 38 with Georgia. It's an A-grade play. I just want to – this is also half a fade of Vanderbilt more than anything else, as bad as they are. I mentioned this last week. They're a little improved, but they're improved from being one of the 10 worst teams in college football. They're still in nowhere near this class. If Georgia had Ole Miss next weekend, if Georgia had Tennessee next weekend – this is a pull all the starters in the middle of the third quarter game, but they don't. So I'm going to lay the 38 with Georgia A-grade play for me. Total's 58. Because Jared, what's your take for us on this one?
I love the under in this game. It's going to be a 2-unit play for me, under 58. 58 is a really key number there. I watched a lot of the Vanderbilt Ole Miss game. I had 2 units on the under, and then I had a unit on Ole Miss covering. Like you said, hat tip to Lane Kiffin. You are the worst, but also the absolute best.
Not the hero that we need, but the hero we need, or whatever.
Yeah. So that was just absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Anyway, I'm playing the under here. The one thing that I got when I was watching Vanderbilt was they were leading at halftime. They were in that quote unquote in that game early in the third quarter. They gave up a lot of quick touchdowns there that kind of got out of hand early, but they were down by 10 for a good part of the third quarter. And their offense is just incapable of operating at any tempo whatsoever. I mean, it was at a point in the game where they still had a chance to win and put up some points, and they would just not move quickly for their life. And so I can definitely see that being the case here. Obviously, you're playing Georgia. You want to just limit the number of possessions that Georgia has altogether. I think Vanderbilt is going to just take every single second on this play clock of every single play. And you mentioned that this is a good opportunity for Georgia to work on their offense. But the thing is their offense hasn't been very good. And so this is also partly that as well. And I feel like Kirby, after some of the, I don't want to say issues they've had, but the inconsistencies they've had, I think Kirby, and it's the reason that I played the under there in the Auburn game, which how that under did not hit, it is beyond me. But I think that Kirby's just gone back to, you know what, we're just going to do what we do. We're going to score like 21 points, and then we're just going to put it in park and just sit there. And so even though it's Vanderbilt, I think Kirby just feels comfortable doing that. Maybe they get their offensive woes fixed, but again, they have offensive woes. So even if they want to try to run it up, will they, they relative to everybody else, yes, they can run it up against Vanderbilt, but will they be able to run it up and be able to clear a number like 58 when Vanderbilt, I don't know how many points Vanderbilt scores. I don't know. So again, 2 units on the under 58 for me. This is a key number. It would only be 1 unit probably if it were south of 58, but really like it at this number.
I'm going to join you with the under 58 as an official recommendation for me. And here's why. This reminds me of the old school. We see it every year, Vanderbilt, or however they play Vanderbilt, Alabama games, where the spread and the total are like basically the same number. And it's like, is Vanderbilt going to score? And I agree with you. I think it's the same sort of thing. And I agree with you about Georgia's game plan. And here's the thing. I think it plays out just like the fourth quarter of that Georgia-Auburn game where there's a lot of points late. Here's the thing is I think it's a lot of points late from one side because I think Georgia is going to, like you said, they're just going to do what they do, which is pound the ball. Mm-hmm. That's going to get you 3, 4, 5 yard runs early on because Vanderbilt's not very good. But what's that going to be by the fourth quarter? That's going to be a 60-yard touchdown run. That's going to be 10-yard runs. So I agree. I think it's not that they're going to be trying to run up the score as much, but it's going to be they're going to score late. They're going to be trying some things throughout, but also I think they're going to be able to get touchdowns just like they did against Auburn. But I agree with you in that Vanderbilt, I don't think will be able to like Auburn was able to, and that would have been your under would have hit. It had Auburn not scored a couple of those late touchdowns as well. So I think that Vanderbilt being a step down from Auburn makes the under safe. So I'm like you, and I love the fact that it's at that key number of 58 as well. Yep. So I'm gonna take journey with that under. Like I said, it feels like the old school Alabama Vanderbilt game, that type of game. I'm gonna call my shot here officially. I'm gonna say Georgia 45 zip. That's my official prediction.
That sounds wonderful.
All right. 3:30 Eastern, Northern Illinois at Eastern Michigan. We forgot to bring Jake on for all the MAC games. I guess that was poor planning on my part. Eastern Michigan. What's up? I mean,
I don't know. I don't want to give away my analysis of this game, so I'm just going to let you
go. Okay. I mean, that's my analysis is Eastern Michigan. What's up? They were good and then they weren't. And we thought that they weren't, and then they were, and then I don't know. It's feeling a little bit like they got something against us, And the good news is I had Eastern Michigan against Arizona State, so I can always hang my hat on that one. I'm going to lay the 2.5 with Eastern Michigan. This has nothing to do with them because I don't know what the heck to make of that team. I like the number that it's less than 3. I like that they're at home. I don't think Northern Illinois is that good. We saw them just get clocked this last week. I talked about it that Northern Illinois, last year had that magic of playing in those close games and winning those close games or whatever. I think that was a bit of a mirage. I don't think they were that good then. They just kind of games got weird, and we saw a little bit of that early on. But I think we're starting to see a little bit of who Northern Illinois really is. And I think it's
regression to the mean.
Exactly. And I think they're just not a good team. So I'm going to lay the 2.5 with Eastern Michigan. Both of these teams, again, in the 100s on the ranking wise. Northern Illinois 1-5, Eastern Michigan 4-2. I think they're a lot closer than that. The record's being a little bit misleading, but I think there is something to Eastern Michigan's winning games and Northern Illinois isn't. I think they can win this one. I think 2.5 is a low number. Sideline says it should be Eastern Michigan -4. So I'm going to take a B grade pick on them at 2.5. Again, another one I'm going to lock in early in the week just because I think it should get to 3.5. And at 3.5, it's just a very blah number. So lock in the 2.5. Depending on when you're listening to this, if it's already up to 3, lock in the 3 before it gets 3.5. Total 63. Kind of a key-ish number. Because Jared, what do you got for us?
What's the name of the person that sits in the courtroom that like takes all the little notes as people are talking? Stenographer? Sure. Do we have like a stenographer or like a note taker for the show or anything?
Not that I know of. Maybe someone can jump up and say that's been them.
Yeah, okay. Maybe you do. Well, if there is anybody taking a record of this, I think it's the first time this year I'm saying this. I'm done with Eastern Michigan. Okay, like not playing any of their games anymore. So that's my entire analysis of this. If you if you feel like you have a good angle on this game, good, run with it. I don't have anything good for you. What I will say about Northern Illinois, though, is this was kind of my concern with them coming into the season, was that they had all those one-score wins last year, but their underlying metrics were not nearly as good as what their record ended up being. And sure enough, you're kind of seeing that this year. So I think, unfortunately, this is more of what you can expect from Northern Illinois this year. They just,
it's not good.
A lot of good luck last year, and this year, with average luck, they're going to be good if they can go to a bowl game.
Yeah, and no one can ever take that good luck away from them.
Yeah, correct.
Also, 3:30 Eastern, Western Kentucky at Middle Tennessee. I had an A-grade play fading Middle Tennessee last week. I said I just don't think they got the horses. I had an A-grade play on Western Kentucky to just hang in there with UTSA. I mean, this seems pretty obvious, right? These two teams are playing. I'm going to take an A-grade pick here on Western Kentucky. Another one I want to lock in early. I want to lay the 7 before it gets any higher. It's a road game. Western Kentucky coming off of a tough game, obviously. But, I mean, they're just a good team. Middle Tennessee isn't. I mean, it's really not more complicated than that. This number should be a lot higher, in my opinion. Sideline says 8. I think it should be double digits. I think Western Kentucky could go on the road and get a big victory here. I don't think there's anything more else to say than that. Middle Tennessee's ranked about 100th, Western Kentucky 66th, according to Sideline. I mean, there's a big difference between these two teams. And Sideline's been kind of high on Middle Tennessee State. So, again, like I said, I really think this number should be 10, maybe even 10.5. I'm going to lay the 7 A-grade pick. Total is 66. What do you got for us, Jared?
Official pick for me, I'm also laying the 7 points with Western Kentucky. I just don't see how Middle Tennessee State gets any stops. To me, this feels like a carbon copy of the game a couple of weeks ago between UTSA and Middle Tennessee that UTSA won 45 to 30.
Because Western Kentucky and UTSA are carbon copies of each other, basically. Right?
You are exactly correct. So I see that playing out the same way. I agree. Again, laying the 7 points with Western Kentucky sounds great. You don't hear me say this very often, but this feels like a spot for the over to me. If you look at Middle Tennessee State's schedule, they give up 44 to James Madison. They give up 19 to Colorado State, who is just awful on offense. Gave up 31 to Miami, gave up 45 to UTSA, gave up 41 to UAB last week. I feel like you can just pencil in Western Kentucky for 45 points, and so can Middle Tennessee get to 21? I don't know, but I think I would probably lean towards the over 66, which for me, you usually don't hear me making recommendations like that on a number like this.
66, a key number as well. The numbers get a little less key up here. Right, I feel like they get a little bit less key in the upper 60s. They start getting more key in the 70s and 80s because you have to have touchdowns. So then you just start counting by 7s, right? On the lower ones, you start thinking about the 3s. Because Jared, I'm looking over as well. I have a question for you before I lock in the over. Are we concerned at all about Western Kentucky playing UAB next Friday with the over? I don't think it affects the spread any because it's not, the only way that they pull guys is if they're up 21-28 late. Otherwise, they're going to have to go out and win a road game, right? So I don't think it affects that. I don't think it's a look-ahead spot's more of you're a 20-point favorite. So my only question, though, is does that affect the total at all? Because if it other than that game, I'm with you. I like the over. I just don't know how that affects our thoughts about points late in this one.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I tend to think that it would almost. I think it would almost wash out because in my mind, like if this game goes over, Western Kentucky could have 45 points at like the end of the third quarter or something like that, and then they put in their backups on defense, and that's more likely that Middle Tennessee State may score. So I feel like it's a little bit of a wash. But if that's something that you think is likely to happen, or not likely to happen, but if you're convinced about this being a look ahead spot, then sure. Like I think that's a valid reason why to go.
Well, no. It's not so much. I just didn't know what the thoughts were on that. It was just more about a point to discuss. I wasn't talked out of it, so I'm also going to make official play, or I am going to make an official play on the over here of 66. It's like I said, a kind of a key-ish number. I think there should be a lot of points.
Yeah. What I would say is that 67 is kind of a dead number. And so if you wanted to wait, and I don't think there would be any way this would get to 65, but if you wanted to wait and then play it over 67, that's really the exact same thing as playing over 66. And so, for me, I would rather just wait. And again, I don't think it's going to go to 65, but if for some reason it did, that's a lot more valuable than just waiting and playing over 67.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. 3:30 Eastern, Arkansas at BYU. Gosh, these two teams, disappointing? Is that the right word? Letdown?
I think I would say that we have established that these two teams are much better than bad teams and much worse than good teams.
Yes.
The problem is I don't know where that leaves us when they're playing each other.
That's a fair point. Arkansas, Jefferson, sounds like he actually was okay to play this weekend, but they just didn't really want him to, is one potential report out of that. I'm assuming he's going to be good to go if they want him to play this weekend. So no adjustment on the spread there. Quarterback-wise, for me, Sideline says that this should be Arkansas favored by half a point. So basically a pick 'em. Sideline has Arkansas ranked 39th, BYU 54th. I faded BYU last weekend. They got a couple of the receivers healthy and back and still couldn't win. Needed late points to still not cover. I guess they covered a teaser if you had BYU teased. And that was some late points. I mean, Notre Dame controlled that game. And as we know, Notre Dame also not a great team, a solid team, but not a great one. How is Notre Dame drastically different than Arkansas? They're both kind of that same sort of there are obviously some differences in styles, but I mean, that same sort of like, we know you're solid, but, a little bit disappointing. I mean, the location's a little bit better for BYU here being at home, of course. But I just think Arkansas is a better team. I think they can go on the road and get the victory. I like getting the field goal because BYU sometimes plays in these wonky games. They have no kicker, so they might miss extra points, and that might make things wonky. It might be a 1-point game or a 2-point game. If Baylor had made that extra point a long time ago, that would have been a 1-point game. There's more ways than you realize to win a +3 pick in a BYU game. So I'm going to take Arkansas +3. So I think this should be a pick 'em. This would be an A-grade play. If I had any faith in Arkansas, I think that's the bottom line is I don't. Yeah. So I like this. I don't love it. That's the difference between the A and the B grade plays. I play my A plays at 50% higher than the B grade plays because I like them just a little bit more. I just don't have any faith in Arkansas. So it's one where I'm going to grab the 3. I think it's smart. I think plus on the money line makes sense as well. I think it plays out similar to the Baylor game where Baylor could have, maybe should have won that game. But BYU's a lot more banged up since then. Arkansas has been banged up all season, so it doesn't really change anything for them. Yeah. And I'm just I said it last week, I think BYU just may not be very good. I think they kind of got lucky in that Baylor spot early on in the season, but I've just been not impressed with BYU as the season has gone along. And I'm going to continue to ride that narrative. I'm taking Arkansas with the 3 points. B grade pick, total of 59.5. Because Jared, what do you have for us?
The only thing I feel like I know about this game, aside from I think these two teams are both better than bad teams and worse than really good teams, is Arkansas's pass defense is bad. And so I think if anything here, I might be looking to like the BYU team total whenever that comes out. I don't know what it's implied here, maybe around 28 or so. If it's if you find it like 27.5 or 27, I would love that. I think it's probably more like 28. I think I would still probably play over the 28 there, just because you mentioned BYU getting a couple of receivers.
It'd be implied at 31.5.
30. Oh yeah, I did that backwards. I was doing Arkansas. Yeah. Okay, I like it a little bit less there, but that's kind of what I would look at, just because I think that BYU is going to be able to air the ball out against Arkansas, just kind of like everybody has against Arkansas except A&M, but A&M is just incapable, and so BYU is capable, and so that's the kind of the thing that I would look at here, because again, aside from what I just mentioned before, I feel like the only thing I know is that Arkansas's pass defense is bad. Arkansas State's pass defense is also bad.
Also bad. True. Not really relevant to this game, but
no, but Arkansas's defense is bad. I just say Arkansas and bad defense, and I just automatically assume
so the state, yeah. I like the over here. I'm not playing it yet because I don't like this number at 59.5. There's really no rush to play it at this number. As we talk about, I will loop back. So I will play this over. I just have no rush to do it right now. I agree with your analysis. I also agree with how many points Notre Dame put up on BYU. And I think Arkansas's offense is better than Notre Dame's. I think Arkansas's defense is worse than Notre Dame's. Like I said, differences in styles there. But I mean, that game got within 10-ish points of this or whatever. And Arkansas's defense, again, nowhere near as good as Notre Dame's, but their offense, I think, a lot better. So if Notre Dame can put up those type of points on BYU, Arkansas is going to put up points too. I think BYU is going to put up points. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. So I like the over as well. I'd rather play over 58.5 would be better. I'd at least settle for 59 and the push on that key number. So it's an over that I like. I just want to wait or shop around. If you can go ahead and get 59 right now, I don't know if that's out there, but if it is, go grab over 59 right now. I think that's a safe number because I think there's just a lot of points in this one.
Yep.
4 p.m. Eastern, Tulane at South Florida. I'm going to take a B grade play here on Tulane minus 10.5. Sideline says this should be 15.6. This is an A grade play. This is a 3-unit play. I'm only putting 2 at 10.5 though, because I kind of hope that someone's dumb enough to move this number down to 10 and I can put another unit down on Tulane minus 10. I don't think it's going to happen though. So I'm going to get my 2 units down on this number. If it goes up, 11 is not as key as you would think because teams at that point tend to go for 2 at different amounts. So 11 just doesn't happen as often as the brain likes to think it would. So really, if it's 11, 11.5, 12, 12.5, it's not that big of a difference from 10.5, but it is an A grade play. I think 13 and 14 are the most likely outcomes from this. And then I think 17 is actually more likely than 10. And to be completely honest, as bad as South Florida is and as solid as Tulane looks, this could be a rout. So it's an A grade play for me on Tulane. I'm just only locking 2 units in right now at 10.5 because I want 10. If you could shop around and get 10, it's an A grade play at 10. I'll add another unit on this one later on. Just not going to get too crazy. But like I said, I don't think it goes to 10. So I'm going to at least get 2 units in at 10.5 because I think that's the best number we're going to see. Yep. But just in case weird things happen, I love Tulane in this spot. South Florida is down in the hundreds. Tulane's ranked 42nd. I mean, this is a 5-1 versus a 1-5 team, and that's actually accurate, right? Like with baseball, we're talking about ERA. ERA is not the best predictive measure, but sometimes you look at ERA and it's like, nope, that does tell the story. And these records do tell the story here. I like this Tulane team. I backed them last week, and they were really good to me then. And like I said, it's like, they're like a quietly good team. I just think they can handle this very bad South Florida team.
Yep.
Total of 54.5. Because Jared, can there be? I feel the total feels a little high to me because Tulane got a good defense. Can South Florida score?
South Florida is very one-dimensional on offense, and so I tend to agree with you that it would be difficult for them to score against this Tulane team, but only a sucker would play an under 54.5.
Fair, of course.
And so, obviously, wait on that and see what happens. Man, I completely agree with your analysis on Tulane. I think they are a fairly good team. They beat Kansas State. They beat ECU last week. They had the loss to Southern Miss at home, but they completely dominated the box score of that game if you go back and look at it. And so I assume Sideline's not docking them too much because, their win expectancy in that game was probably fairly high. Again, I think Tulane's a pretty good team. South Florida is just way too one-dimensional. With what we've seen from Tulane this year, I think that they are just going to be able to stop South Florida on the ground. And at that point, I have no idea what South Florida has. I was going to lay the 10 points and then this moved to 10.5. And as you kind of alluded to, I just feel a lot less good about it at 10.5. So if this goes back down to 10, I will jump on it. But at 10.5, I'm just going to stay away.
Because there are a lot of 55s out there right now. Would you tell people it's safe to play under 55?
Yes.
Okay. And that's the number I'm waiting for as well. Obviously, you like 55.5 even better, but there are a lot of 55s out here just scrolling through BetStamp. Going back to the Arkansas BYU game, there's a 58.5 out there. If you want to go over that, it's at a domestic book that starts with an F. So it's out there. A lot of you have accounts at that place. So always shop around, people. Always shop around and get, especially with these totals, shopping around matters a lot. Because a lot of times, full point differences, even around key numbers, which is, it's not just points around dead numbers. It's around key numbers sometimes. So
even the juice on key numbers. It all adds up.
Yeah, it does. So a lot of 55s out here on Tulane, South Florida. That's the number I'd be playing under just because it's a better number than 54.5. I just don't think South Florida scores. Tulane's it can shut out reasonably good teams or slow down reasonably good teams and hold them down. South Florida's not a reasonably good offense.
Yeah.
It's that simple. 5:30 Eastern, Arizona at Washington. I feel vindicated. I felt vindicated about Arizona. I'm sorry. I feel smug about them. I heard so much at the start of the season how Arizona, and it went just from you. I'm not picking at you here. It was a lot of comments, Arizona's an improved team or whatever. And I was like, I don't see it. Model doesn't see it. And Arizona is still Arizona. They are improved, but it's almost like we talked about with Vanderbilt, right? They're improved from being so bad that it's like they're still not that good. They're still a long ways away.
And I think also, which I could go on a big tangent here about how we probably haven't talked enough about the Pac-12 this year.
But it's true. Actually, kind of good.
Yeah. And so where I'm going with this is that Arizona could be, really improved from last season, but I feel like the middle to top of the Pac-12 is so much higher as well. Are you really going to see? Are you going to see that improvement in Arizona's results?
Excellent point.
I don't know what the answer is to that.
Excellent point. Absolutely. I'm going to like the 15 with Washington. I don't see how this is drastically different than the Oregon game. That game was in Arizona. This game's in Washington. Oregon's a better team than Washington, but again, you flip the location here. Sideline's got Washington ranked 33rd, Arizona 94th. Washington's just a much better team. Sideline has this at Washington minus 20. I keep going back to it, but pick any number of these Arizona games where Sideline's had big numbers on them, and it's like you're on the wrong side of a key number, but it doesn't matter. Go back to that Mississippi State game where it was like 8.5, and it was like, oh, what if we're on the wrong side, whatever. I was like, no, just lay it. Like, who cares? It should be way higher. And I got to 11. I was like, just lay it. Who cares? Like, it should be out at 14. It's the same thing here. This number should be 17 to 20. Lay the 15. I don't see it getting to 14. If it does, cool. But Washington is a much better team. I don't think Arizona can stop them. Washington has problems on defense. They're going to give up some points, but I think they literally can score every time they have the ball if they want to. That's why this total is 70.5. You got the hook there, but it's definitely not an underplay, I think, because Washington's just going to score a ton of points, and their defense can give up some points. So, this feels like a, 52 to 25 type, just wild, like, God, there's just so many points in this game. Cousin Jared, what's your take on this one?
Methinks that Washington's defense may be pretty bad. And so that's why I can't believe I'm saying this. I would lean towards over 70.5 as well, just because, you say what you want about Arizona, but Delora, again, has been a vast improvement over everything that they've had last year. I'm waiting on this one because this is going to be so high scoring. If this goes down to 14, which maybe some people are like me and look at what Arizona State did to Washington's defense, and they're like, hey, Arizona is going to score 35 points in this game. I'm not going to lay 15. I don't know if that's going to happen. If this goes down to 14, I would jump on it. But again, if this goes up to like 16.5, like, who cares? I'll play it like 16.5. Not much difference between 16.5 and 15 there, as long as I get it before it hits 17. So this is definitely one that I have my eye on, hoping it goes down. But if I have to wait to 16.5 or 17, that's fine. I'll lay that number too.
Yeah. No 70s out there that I can see. A lot of 71s and some even 71.5s. I can't pull the trigger on the over here at this number. It's just too high for me. I feel like I agree with you. Washington's defense is bad. Arizona's going to score points. It's just, if this game ends up being a blowout, like I don't know how the fourth quarter is going to play out. So it's not an over that I can recommend at this number. At 69.5, I think it's a different story, but I don't think we're going to see that number. So I would go over rather than under. I would not play under whatsoever. But I just don't like the over enough, I think, to pull the trigger at that number personally. 7:30 Eastern kickoff, Memphis at East Carolina. I'm going to grab the 4.5 with Memphis in this one on the road. These two teams are pretty similar. Sideline actually has Memphis 3 spots ahead of East Carolina. Basically says that East Carolina should just get the normal home field advantage, maybe even a little bit less. It should be East Carolina basically -2. So getting 4.5 offers a lot of value on this side of 3 and 4, which are two extremely common outcomes. Great number here. And two teams that I don't completely trust and know what to make of. So give me the 4.5 all day long. It's an A-grade pledge. I think there's a lot of value on this pick. Same thing with the money line. If that's something that you like, big plus odds in a game that I really don't know what to make of either one of these teams. So I just think they're about the same. I'm getting 4.5. I think that's a smart play. A great play for me on Memphis. Total is 60. Cousin Jared, we somehow get screwed in every Memphis game, no matter what we do.
Yeah.
So tell the viewer how they can get screwed in this game. I guess is really my ask of you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just out of principle, I want to lay the points against Memphis just because I hate Memphis at this point. But
that's when they'll win outright.
Yeah. I mean, this is just all of this is gross. I don't like anything about this game. I don't trust East Carolina, but I mean, obviously, I don't trust Memphis either. I feel like if I had to, I'd take the 4.5 points on the total. I think I would go under, but
Memphis.
What does that mean?
And this is where I said at the start, right? I want to learn. I'm a big believer in don't be the smartest person in the room, right? Which is hard for me as a professor because then I'm supposed to be the smartest person in the room at that subject at least. But I'm a big believer in surround yourself with people who you can learn from. If someone can explain to me why Memphis constantly finds themselves in situations where they have a ton of points late, I don't quite get it. Like that doesn't seem like something that it lends itself to like constantly happening, but Memphis constantly ends up with a ton of points in the last like 5 minutes of their games. Mm-hmm. And it just way more than other teams. I'm like, what is going on? Like, what's in the water there? It's obviously not in the water, but like what's going on there in Memphis to constantly cause a point barrage late in their games? It just seems weird to me. Like I can't figure it out.
Yeah. It's rough. It's rough for sure. Yeah. And this is a reason why you need to become a Patreon subscriber and get access to our Discord, because I told you exactly how this was going to play out in the Discord. And basically I told you that, hey, Houston's going to go down and score here with, a minute left in the game, and the over is going to hit just because I've lost this so many times. And then they went up me because they knew that I didn't, have them on the total in this game. They knew I had them on the spread. So Houston had to score twice in 3 minutes, get the onside kicks.
Oh no, it's like a minute and a half.
Yeah. So it's just, I can't talk about Memphis. I'm not in a good spot with them.
I feel like you could ignore Memphis for like 3 years and still feel burnt about
better. Yes, I definitely could be.
All right, 8 p.m. Eastern. New Mexico State. New Mexico has shown life early in some games, and maybe just like a one-trick pony type thing. They've only got a couple things they can do, and then just can't do anything the rest of the game. Got out to a great start for us this last week against a Wyoming team that's just very meh. And, after a 14-0 start, I think they got outscored, 24-0 or something like that the rest of the game. New Mexico State, on the other hand, though, not much better. I mean, this is a rivalry, I guess. In-state rivalry, the only two FBS schools there, I guess. We can still call New Mexico State FBS, technically.
Yeah, technically.
New Mexico's bad. New Mexico State's worse. I mean, I think that's really the analysis here. New Mexico State falls in that category of some of the bottom teams just kind of having a drop off from that next tier. I'm going to lay the 6 with New Mexico. I like that it's under a touchdown. Sideline says this should be 7.4. So I think if you're on the right side of 7, that's where you want to be. But it's a B grade play for me and not an A grade play because I don't trust New Mexico. I don't trust New Mexico State, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I don't trust New Mexico at all, given what I've seen from the last 2 weeks, where they just have long stretches where it's like 3 plays and punt, or they'll get 1 first down miraculously, and then it's 3 plays and punt. And so I just can't with a lot of confidence, say I love this play, but I do think it should be 7. That as bad as New Mexico is, I think Wyoming's a whole lot better than New Mexico State. And so I think it's a step down in competition. New Mexico's defense has looked competent, and I think competent is enough to slow down New Mexico State. So I think they're the better team. It's a road game, but there's not really a lot of travel, and there's not really a home field edge here. In New Mexico State, there's not really a lot of excitement there for the football team. So I think under a touchdown makes sense. It's a play I like. It's a play I think is worth making. It's just not a play I love. Total of 37.5. I would never play this over for sure. Are we bold enough to play under 37.5? I feel like 38. I'm playing under 38. 37.5. I don't know. It feels a little low.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd stay away from the total in this game. A rivalry game. Who knows what shenanigans might be pulled.
That's a good
point. But it's an official play for me too. I'm laying the 6th with New Mexico, and it's basically as simple as you made it. When you have the opportunity to lay less than a touchdown with teams that are this bad, like as bad as New Mexico State is, we talk about it at least once every week about outliers. We usually talk about it at the top end with the top 3 teams, but it's very similar on the bottom end with how bad those teams are. It's kind of hard to account for how bad they really are, and New Mexico State is in that category. So the fact that I can lay less than a touchdown against one of the worst teams in FBS, I'm going to take that every single time. So maybe it won't work out like it didn't work out last week, with Colorado State. But you know what, I'm going to give it another shot because teams are this bad for a reason.
Right. New Mexico State lost by 14 to Florida International, who's obviously terrible. Lost by 7 to UTEP, who's also pretty bad. I mean, UTEP and New Mexico are pretty comparable. So I'm like, I think 7 is the most common outcome. So I think laying 6 makes sense. And like I said, rivalry game, which means I don't know. It means it at least means that New Mexico is not going to give up an easy back door because they're, wanting to win as much as they can, I guess.
Yeah.
Shifting to a game of importance, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yes.
USC and Utah. Look, if Utah beating USC this week, and then who is Oregon beating UCLA next week wouldn't be the most Pac-12 thing ever. I don't know what it is. I'm calling it. Utah's going to win this game, and they're already out of the playoff now, and they're about to spoil somebody else because this is what the Pac-12 does. I agree with you. Pac-12 much better. The problem with the Pac-12 now is that they're all a lot better. The Pac-12 needed one, maybe 2 teams to get better and separate themselves from the rest, beat up on everybody else, have a fantastic conference championship game, winner goes to the playoff. Instead, they got like 4 or 5 teams that are actually a lot better. And so the same thing's going to happen, just at a better quality. I like all these teams. I think they're all really improved. Washington going from very just mediocre to bad to like competently good. Utah was good last year, of course, as well. But USC now, a lot better. UCLA looking really good now. Yeah. Oregon, Oregon's back, right?
But Washington State stepping up.
Washington State, stepping it up, absolutely. Not Colorado, but whatever. I think Utah wins this game at home. They have a fantastic home field advantage there. They're obviously be pissed off about last week. It's only 3 points. It's an A grade play for me, laying the 3 with Utah. Sideline says it should be 4.8. USC is better, but they're not a top 10 team. They have holes both on offense and defense. And I believe in Kyle Whittingham. I believe in this Utah team to exploit those holes. They went up against a tough task against UCLA. And what I took from that game had nothing to do with Utah. It had to do with UCLA. We talked about it. We were very concerned about UCLA and some of their poor outings. And I made the comment, I said, maybe they were just kind of playing possum early on, trying some things out. But I needed to see more from UCLA, and they did. And props to them. They looked fantastic. And to me, I was taking more of that from, hey, we wondered why Chip Kelly wasn't having success at UCLA after the success he had at Oregon. Why couldn't he do it at UCLA? And I took away from Saturday, I was like, okay, here it is. The success we were waiting on him to have. He's back. He's got it. And I think they're a legit team. I still think Utah's also very good. I think this number's too low because of what happened this last weekend. I think it's a great spot to buy low on Utah, laying just the 3. A grade pick for me on the Utes. Again, I think this number should be in that dead spot between 4 and 6. A grade play for me there. Total of 60.5. I kind of like the under here. The Utah under didn't work last week, but USC seems to be the type of team that plays with their opponents, which is why I said I don't think they're a top 10 team. They can't really control the game. If you go fast, they'll go fast. If you go slow, they'll go slow. I think Utah wants to go slow, but Utah not going, playing with a lot of points this last week, it has me a little bit nervous, but I would lean under, but I'm a little bit nervous after what I saw this last weekend on that total.
Yep, I would also lean under on this game, but I don't have a feel one way or another because I feel like you mentioned USC. We've seen plenty of weaknesses from them over the course of the season, but I'm wondering if we saw some weaknesses for Utah last week, and you definitely feel like if USC can take something from that game, they could definitely exploit some of the same things, or even go back and look at some of the stuff that Florida did, putting up 29 points. Because looking back on that's kind of weird how that game played out. Aside from it being the first week of the season.
Yes, I was going to say, I was going to caution everyone on that. First week of the season, you have the whole offseason game plan.
Yeah,
I don't want to say throw everything out the window, but everything gets a bit of an asterisk because you don't really know what teams are doing and what they're prepping for. And you come out and do something they weren't expecting, and all of a sudden it's going to look wonky. So, I'd be more concerned about the UCLA thing than the Florida thing personally. As weird as that result is in hindsight, for sure.
Yeah, so I would lean under. I would lean laying the points with Utah. To me, also, no reason to think that this would go down to 2.5. But if it did go down to 2.5, I would maybe think of money line play on Utah at that point as well, just in case things got weird. But I'm just excited about this game. I was excited about the Utah UCLA game last week. I'm excited about this game. It feels like it's been a while since we've been this excited about. At least since I've been this excited about Pac-12 football, and that's great for any of us who may be up at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, still need a football fix.
Yeah. I completely agree with everything you said there. Like I said, to me, the bottom line is the Pac-12. Until the Pac-12 stops Pac-12ing, I'm going to continue to believe that they're going to keep Pac-12ing, and this would be Utah wins this game, gives USC a loss. UCLA loses to a really good Oregon school, and then the losses just keep piling up until it's a 2-loss team and a 3-loss team in the conference championship game, and we're like, these teams are really good. This is fun, and yet none of them have a chance to make the playoff. I think the conference just overall got too good. Like I said, to me, I think this is more about a good buy low spot for Utah because I think their home field advantage matters a lot at altitude. Rabid fan base, night game really sets up to be a spot where Utah wins this game and everybody's like, wow, we thought USC was back. And it's not that they aren't. They are still really good. It's just that Utah also is really good, and it's really tough to win. Really tough to win in Utah. Where were Utah's losses? On both coasts, right? Not at home. So I think this is a great spot to lay the 3 with Utah at home. The undercard an hour later, but the undercard here in the Pac-12, Washington State and Oregon State. Nolan was out for Oregon State. That dropped that line a little bit. I tweeted out and added the play on Stanford, like that even more, like that under as well. Nailed all that. It was a tight ball game.
Yeah, good call on the under 57 when we were recording last week.
Giving Oregon State a slight penalty, assuming he might be out again, and that's very 50-50. Hard to say at this point. Their offense is that good anyway. So the biggest point about the quarterback penalty is how much he impacts the game versus the backup. And I don't know. I'm not sure it's a huge deal for Oregon State. It's a small deal for sure. I'm not sure it's huge. So a slight penalty there. I think this should be a pick 'em. Independent of the quarterback injury, I still have Washington State as a better team than Oregon State. I don't know why I'm getting the field goal and the hook. It's the Pac-12, the middle tier Pac-12 version of Oklahoma State TCU, in my opinion. I know it's the road team, but I think they're a little bit better. I don't know why I'm getting the field goal and the hook. A-grade play for me. I think moneyline makes a lot of sense. I don't know what's going to happen. So give me 3.5 any day of the week. I think it's a great play to be a little bit extra invested in. A total of 52.5, which Washington State's defense is improved, but you saw what happened last week, and I don't really think I like the under this week like I did last week with Oregon State. That's a really low number. I don't like the over with Oregon State involved at all. But it feels like maybe we learned a lesson from that total against Stanford being a little bit too high, and now it's dropped down a little bit lower. I think this is a pretty decently priced total at this number. Because Jared, what is your take?
I'm taking the 3.5 points with Washington State as well. That's going to be an official play for me just because I feel like what I've seen from both of these teams this year, their defenses has some moments where they can look really good and can kind of not necessarily take over the game, but definitely the defenses played at a higher level than the offenses are for both schools. And so I can see this being a relatively lower scoring game, and 3.5 points at that point is just more valuable. I also just trust Cameron Ward, the Washington State quarterback, to make more plays coming down the stretch than I do anybody who might be playing quarterback for Oregon State at this point. So it's one of those situations where I trust both defenses and I trust the quarterback for one team a lot more than I trust whoever might be lining up at quarterback for the other team. And so 3.5 points seems like a bargain to me.
And sorry, I said last week, I meant earlier this season against Oregon was the game I was referencing with Washington State. That game was definitely an outlier with Oregon involved, but they do have the offensive power
Yeah.
to put up some points in a hurry. But like you said, I think their defense is a little bit better than their offense. I think maybe I'll frame it like this, I guess. My thought on this is they gave up 30 points last week to USC. USC has a better offense than Oregon State.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, what type of team is USC? We just got through talking about that. USC's had some games where the offense has looked really good, and they've had some games where the defense has looked really good, and vice versa. And so I think your take on that game last week, I think affects your take here. If you think that was a low-scoring game because Washington State kept it low-scoring, then I think you still have to go under this 52.5 here. If you think it was low-scoring because USC has played in some low-scoring games, including one against this Oregon State team, then maybe that was more about USC than Washington State, and then maybe this total gets a little bit low. I still think I'd lean under if pressed.
Yeah, I think I would too.
But I don't know. Maybe it's what I need to think a little bit more on. If nothing else, like I said, I love the 3.5. The other fear I guess you have with this one, with that Oklahoma State TCU, and we talked about, could this be a game that goes to overtime, being a tight ball game? Who knows what's going to happen, and that gets you some extra points. I mean, I feel like overtime is definitely on the table on a game like this.
Yeah, and I feel like that would be on brand for both of these teams.
Absolutely. And for Oklahoma State TCU, give me the points, sure.
Yeah.
For this one, though, that could really screw up the under. So it's I'm not pulling the trigger yet, but stay tuned later on. Maybe I will. We'll see. 10:30 Eastern. I got some good late ones here for you. Air Force at UNLV. I'm going to grab the 9.5 with UNLV. It's a B grade pick. I wish it was 10. It's an A grade edge, so it's similar to the one I talked about earlier on with Tulane, in that I won a third unit on this. I just don't have to do it right now in case it does get to 10. I don't think it does, so I'm going to go get 2 units at 9.5, but whether it's 9.5, 9, 8.5, 8, 7.5, all kind of the same. So I'll hold back that third unit for now, just in case for some weird reason this gets up to 10. Cousin Jared, I don't know about you, but I have really not been impressed the last few weeks with Air Force. They looked like garbage this last week in the game. I thought they were going to really control against Utah State.
Yep.
UNLV a little disappointing as well, right? We thought maybe they were back, but I think in a situation where both teams are disappointing based off recent expectations, go ahead and just give me a ton of points with the home team, because there's more ways that we win that way than needing to lay points with a disappointing team if both are disappointing. Sideline says this should be Air Force minus 4.7, so they should be road favorites, but not by this many points north of a touchdown. So I'm going to grab UNLV plus 9.5 to be a great pick. Total is 54. What is your play on this one?
Official play for me, I'm going to be on the over 54 here. Want to get it before it gets to 55, just because I saw what Utah State did to Air Force, and maybe Utah State's coming around. We know that they definitely have more talent than what they kind of showed at the beginning part of the season. But if Utah State can score 34, then I think UNLV could do something similar at least. And so if you look at Air Force's games, obviously. You can be selective at what you choose. You can tell whatever story you want to tell, right? But against Utah State, that game got to 61 combined points. Against Nevada, it got to 68 total points. Throw out the game against Navy. That's not going to signal anything. They had the game against Wyoming that was 17-14, but Wyoming can kind of get you into a type of game that UNLV is not going to be able to drag you into a similar.
Nor do they want to.
Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like, based on teams that play similar styles and have similar type matchups, all of Air Force's games have gone well past this 54 number. So give me the over 54 here. I think somebody's going to score a lot of points in this game. I don't know who it is, and I don't care who it is. I just think somebody's going to. I think that's going to be enough to get us the over 54.
So full disclosure on this one, we talked about this before. We don't talk about the games beforehand, but I asked Jared, I say, what are the list of games that you really want to talk about for the first episode where you want to get numbers now? And so Cousin Jared sends me a list, and I see Air Force on there. And without looking at anything, I just was like, I'm assuming you're going to play the Air Force under. I didn't see what the number was. Mm-hmm. And so I texted it back and then I saw the number at 54, and then I was like, wait, what? I was assuming that people were going to look at what happened against Utah State and make that same conclusion. I think that UNLV is actually likely to play a higher scoring game than Utah State is. I think their offense is a little bit better. than Utah State's. I think their defense might be a little bit worse, might be about the same. But I mean, if that game at 61, I would have expected this to be like 63. So I was expecting people to realize that Air Force defense is useless. And I think Air Force is going to have some times where they go 3 and out, but they're going to have some pretty quick scores too on some busted plays. You've seen UNLV get a bunch of those, and Air Force offense is wonky enough that sometimes they get those big plays. They're not just 5 yards every play on the triple option. They're sometimes bust back to pass, wide receivers wide open, right? Or
and
Air Force fullback give where it opens up and the fullback runs for 50 yards, right?
Yeah, and Air Force throws it around a little bit more than in a more traditional manner than Navy and Army does. So you get a little more variety with them.
Right. So I just was assuming this total was going to be at least in the 60s. I was thinking, and so I was like, I'm assuming he's going to go under. Then I saw a total of 54, and I was like, what is happening here? So I'm with you. I'm also on the over 54. Okay. To me, like I said, the bottom line is Air Force defense looks so terrible against Utah State, and I think UNLV's offense is better. So I think they can do more damage. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this one. So I think UNLV hangs in there. I think it's tight late, a 3-point game, a 7-point game, a high-scoring game, kind of a fun one late, and a fun one if you like offense. If you like defense, maybe look away would be my take because you're expecting to get you're expecting a lower scoring game from a service academy here, but I don't think you're going to get it. So I'm also on the over 54 with you. 10:45 Eastern, San Jose State at Fresno State. Something I started this week. I didn't do it last week. We talked about the Boise State Fresno State game, and I didn't on my official projections make any quarterback adjustments. I'm starting doing that this now because we're really getting to the point of the season where we're going to have to adjust the numbers a little bit manually for quarterbacks when they're out and when they come back. And so kind of trying to make sure that the projection actually reflects what the model says, but also on occasion when I think there's a quarterback situation that needs to be adjusted. And I will tell you all about that as well. So I'm telling you here, there's a manual adjustment with Fresno State with Hainer. I assume he will still be out. It didn't sound like it was an injury like that he's coming back soon on. From the very start when they say, well, we don't think it's season ending, I'm thinking, well, that means he's out at least like a month. Like if they have to tell us that, like that's not a like teams don't say that when he's going to be back in 2 weeks, or 3 weeks or whatever. So I think the backup is there again. That Boise State game against Fresno State was wonky. There were some points in it based off of some short fields and some busted plays and just some bad football. It was depressing in a way that I didn't quite expect. I expected it to be low scoring depressing, and it was just depressingly bad football. But San Jose State actually kind of good. I've been really impressed with them. They're San Jose State. I feel like 2020 was the year I think that they won the Mountain West, won their division Mountain West. And that was like a year that division was down. And then the last couple of years, or the last, I guess, 2021, the next season, the Mountain West overall got a lot better. Now that we're back to the Mountain West that's not very good, I think this works out really well for San Jose State because now they are kind of like that 2020 team. Not good, but good enough in a bad Mountain West to be like, maybe San Jose State's like one of the top 3 teams in this conference, which is shocking to say. But I've been really impressed with them. Sideline has San Jose State up to 79th. Fresno State down to 86th, and Fresno State has not bottomed out without Hainer. They also lost a key defensive player in that game as well. Part of the reason probably that they gave up points to such a bad offense like Boise State. I don't know if he's going to be back. He didn't play against Boise. They announced both of those guys would be out early in the week against Boise. So that makes me a little more pessimistic about them playing this week, as opposed to when it's a last minute announcement. I tend to think more so they're more likely to play that next week because they were, at least if they're thinking about playing on Friday, you got a really good shot to play 8 days later. If you know you're not playing on a Monday, that doesn't give me a whole lot of hope for the next week. So I don't know if these guys will be back. I mean, that kind of matters because Fresno State doesn't have a lot of depth. They got trucked by a pretty bad Boise State team. I think they're going to get trucked by a frisky San Jose State team. I'm going to lay the 7 with them. It's an A-grade pick with the adjustment for Hainer. Sideline says this should be San Jose State minus 9.6. I want to get it at 7 before it goes to 7.5. This is exactly what happened with Boise State, Fresno State last week. It was 7 on Sunday night, early Monday. By Monday night, I believe, it had gone to 7.5. And I think the same thing is going to happen here. People are going to realize what happened against Boise and realize, honestly, San Jose State and Boise, are they that different at this point? I think San Jose State might actually be a little bit better. It might have a little more upside. I think it goes to 7.5. So I'll lay the 7 A-grade pick for me on them. Total is 49.5. Because Jared, what's your take on this one?
I think in this spot, you either lay the points with San Jose State or you pass, just because I don't think that you can possibly back Fresno unless you know for sure Hayner's coming back. You cannot back Fresno State in this spot. Like you said, I've been really impressed with San Jose State. I'm sure there's a team that I'm blanking on right now, like maybe San Diego State. Could get in a defensive struggle with San Jose State and come out with a win.
That defense has looked really good the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
weaker opponents, but still, their defense is good.
Yeah, but other than that, I'm not quite sure who's going to hang with San Jose State here in the West Division of the Mountain West. I've just been really impressed with what I've seen. If this I know you made the manual adjustment there. I just, if this went under 7, maybe I would consider it. But right now, it's just like, to me, this seems like a pretty well set line. But I don't think you can back Fresno State here. So definitely, if I had to pick a side, I'd lay the points. This is one I have my eye on watching this week.
I think Boise ended up winning that game about 20, if that's correct.
Yeah, I think it's 40-20, something like that.
Sideline has San Jose State ranked 3 spots ahead of Boise now. That game was obviously in Boise. You flipped the location.
Right.
I'm not sure it matters, though. I think had that game been closer, Boise could have scored more. But like you said, I think San Jose State has an offensive element that Boise doesn't have. Their defense is a little bit worse, but I'm not sure it matters. At the start of that game, they touted the backup for Fresno and his completion percentage being the highest at FBS with some minimum. I'm like, that's because he played mop-up duty against USC and UConn. That's it. Like, wait till he plays a real defense, Right. And sure enough, they kind of struggled on offense. And their offense will probably do a little bit better against a weaker San Jose State defense. But San Jose State's offense is going to be able to score. I'm just not sure Fresno State could score. The total is 49.5. Feels pretty well set to me.
Yep, I agree.
All right, that is the games we're going to cover here on episode 1. Cousin Jared, any parting words for us before we sign off?
As we were recording this, Kansas went to 7.5. So when we recorded this, Kansas was getting 7. You can now get Kansas getting 7.5, even better. So go lock that in now, people.
Go lock it in now. Want to say real quick, don't click away yet, viewer. I want to point out something I thought was also very interesting is that last week, I think there were only 2 bad numbers that I got. One of them was Ole Miss, which went down for some reason. I'm not really sure. Mm-hmm. One of them was Kentucky, which got weird with all of their injuries and the quarterback situation. We'll talk about Kentucky later on in this week. Otherwise, I think pretty much every number that I took was a good number, and it didn't end up mattering. Again, thank you, Lane Kiffin, for that one. But the one that I got it's not even a bad number, just an unlucky situation, of course, was Kansas was 7 last week, and I locked in 7, and they were 7.5 by game day. And obviously the hook ended up mattering as they lost by 7. I think I said on show something like there'd be a lot of points in this one, having that touchdown I could land on right on 7. So you have that push protection. It goes up to 7.5. And now it looks like the same thing happening here already with Oklahoma. Like, I think it's more likely they win than lose that game, but you do always have to shop around. And I was thinking about this. Last thing I want to say, I give closing line value a hard time, right? And I think I finally realized, after a year now of talking about this, have realized my official stance on closing line value. It is every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. And some of you are like,
there you go.
Just lost me. I think what happens here is that if you are making good plays, you will get good closing line value. And that's what sideline tends to do. But if you get good closing line value, that does not mean you're making good plays. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of times you get good closing line value, and it doesn't mean crap because you were completely on the wrong side. But if you're making good plays, you will end up getting it. So I think that's the biggest thing is that people tend to flip those. It's like mixing up correlation and causation. They tend to say, we got closing line value. That means it was a good play. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think if you're making a bunch of good plays, you will get that. So it's like looking at it backwards. So anyway, all that to say, Kansas 7.5, even better and a good play, but always shop around and try to get the best number, because you never know when it's going to help. It may not matter at all, but it mattered to Kansas last week, and who knows if it is this week. Again, at least at 7, though, we've got the push protection, which is sometimes important.
Right.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Picks with the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can ensure all the sports betting content we provide on this channel is dropped right into your feed. We'll have more MLB playoff shows coming up. and 2 more college football shows this week. As always, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.